Hello and welcome to Brian Lomack's Movie Talk. Today I am going to be ranking the first two phases of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Started with the first Iron Man, obviously, and finished, bizarrely, with Ant-Man. I always thought that they would end each phase of the Marvel Universe with an Avengers movie. I thought that would be the movie that kind of solidifies each phase. But nope, apparently that wasn't the case. So, 12 films, let's see how they rank. At number 12 we've got Ant-Man, starring Paul Rudd as the hero and directed by Peyton Reed. This film was supposed to have been directed by Edgar Wright. He didn't see eye to eye with Marvel and he left the project. I like this film, I do, so I have to preface, if that's the right word, this whole video by just simply saying there's not a film on this list that I do not like. This one, it just hits the bottom of this list simply because for me personally, it didn't really feel like it was doing anything that we hadn't seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe already. Guy creates a suit, becomes a hero, somebody else wants that tech to create their own suit, becomes a villain. Yeah, it felt very much like, we've kind of seen this before. That being said, like I say, I still really like this film. It's a lot of fun to watch. Paul Rudd is good as the hero. Michael Douglas makes some great support. I wasn't particularly enamoured with Evangeline Lilly's character. She's obviously going to be in the sequel, Ant-Man and the Wasp. She's going to be playing the Wasp. So, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that they will do something with this character that will make me more endeared towards him. The villain as well, as much as I like the actor who plays the villain, he felt a little bit one note to me. I didn't really feel any kind of conflict in this character, any kind of depth to him. He was just one of those, I'm a megalomaniac for the sake of being a megalomaniac. Number 11 is Iron Man 2. Now, Jon Favreau came back as director and so did all of the principal cast except one. Yet another dispute with Marvel and their players. Rhodey was recast in this, and for the better, I think. And that's not to dismiss the original actor, because I actually liked him quite a lot. I really like the actor that took over the role, Don Cheadle. The thing with Iron Man 2, right, is that the first hour of it is one of the best comic book movies ever made. I honestly believe that, you know? I think they made the mistake here of needing to bring Whiplash back for the big finale. For me personally, once we had the scene after the race fight and Tony goes to see him, kind of backstage if you want to call it that, he's been arrested, he's been held, Tony goes to see him and they have that conversation, and Whiplash tells Tony Stark that, I've made God bleed, essentially. The blood is now in the water and the sharks will start circling. After that moment, Whiplash shouldn't have been in the film. That's my personal opinion, because his job as a character was done and it was executed perfectly up until that moment. For my money personally, after that, Justin Hammer should have come to the fore as the main villain. And I think they shot themselves in the foot just a little bit by getting too much comedy out of this guy, making him a little bit too impotent, making him a little bit too silly. When you do that, you can't then ask him to be the main villain, the one to have the main showdown with our hero at the end of the film. Hence, they had to bring back Whiplash. For me, it is a failure, but it is a very good failure, if you get my meaning. Ant-Man may have been a better executed film overall, I think, but it didn't really try anything new. That's why I put it below Iron Man 2. Number 10 is Thor. This is Kenneth Branagh's entry into the MCU, and it's a really good one. This is the film, I think, the first film in the MCU that could have gone seriously wrong, because you're dealing with really big mythical characters, and yeah, you're not on Earth. You're on another planet. You're deep out of space. Yeah, this could have gone horribly wrong. Thanks to the presence of Chris Hemsworth, it is pulled off, and obviously Tom Hiddleston as Loki. The brother rivalry between them two, is really the heart of this movie. Perfect casting with these, particularly Chris Hemsworth, who I don't think gets enough credit. I think in the Avengers movies as well, he gets the biggest laughs. I really love him as Thor. I think he carries this movie beautifully. I think some of the action sequences, well, quite a lot of the action sequences, to be honest, could have been handled better. I don't think it's Kenneth Branagh's strong suit. I think he does really well at getting great performances out of his actors. I think he does really well at making dialogue that could be completely hokey sound, well, like Shakespeare, because let's face it, he has a background in Shakespeare, and that shows. But yeah, sometimes the action sequences, the fight sequences, they're not orchestrated in a brilliant way. They're not terrible, but they could have had a bit more impact, I think. And number 9 for me is the sequel to Thor, Thor: The Dark World. Now, this film suffers from a slightly lackluster villain in the Dark Elf, played by Christopher Eccleston. The guy's got no character. I don't mean Christopher Eccleston, I mean the character, the Dark Elf. There's just not really much there. He's a villain for the sake of being a villain, you know, he's just someone who's evil, someone they need to bring out to give Thor someone to fight. But yeah, he's not really that interesting of a character. Thankfully, everything else in this film is brilliantly orchestrated. You know, there's some kind of side villains that work quite well, and again we get Loki back up to his old tricks, and the banter between him and Thor throughout the film is fantastic. There's some incredible visuals as well. The final fight scene when they're zipping through different time zones and different places in the universe and whatnot is just really great, really fantastic. You know, it just does something for me from a visual standpoint that pushes my buttons. Number 8 is The Incredible Hulk. This feels like it was a film made to really do something different to what was considered to be the mistakes that Ang Lee made. Not from me personally though, I actually really like Ang Lee's Hulk. I love Ang Lee as a director, period. I don't think Hulk is one of his strongest films, but I still think there is a lot in that film to offer, and I enjoy it considerably. Like I say, that's more of a character-driven piece, more of a thoughtful, contemplative piece, which a lot of people don't want in a superhero movie, let's face it. Here, we get the antithesis to that. We get balls-to-the-wall action, we get a huge villain that Hulk can go up against, and yeah, it's just damn right entertaining. It's not the thinking man's comic book movie, but that's not a bad thing. You know, it's handled really well by director Lou Leterrier. I think Edward Norton is perfect casting for Bruce Banner. Again, another actor that MCU had a falling out with and replaced with Mark Ruffalo. I love Mark Ruffalo in the character as well. But yeah, I thought Edward Norton was good casting, really good casting. I also think great casting comes in the shape of Tim Roth, who does a fantastic job as the main villain. One of Marvel's strongest villains, I think. If you look at the MCU, one of the things they're not particularly famous for is giving us great villains, you know, strong villains. I think the Abomination, particularly in the shape of Tim Roth, is one of the strong villains. It kind of has that flavour, that feeling of the series, the Bill Bixby series. You know, anyone who's primarily knows the Hulk from that TV series, I think will probably get something out of this film, because it goes back to that idea of just this man who is a wanderer, who's being pursued by the government and who's trying to get to grips with this monster inside him. Number 7 is the first film from my favourite Avenger, Captain America. Again, one of the strongest villains of the MCU, in the shape of the Red Skull. Helped brilliantly by the fact that he's being played by Hugo Weaving, who, for my money, you couldn't ask for a better actor to play a villain. This is another film that maybe the second half lets it down a bit, but nowhere near to the extent of Iron Man 2. It's still a cracking, kind of rip-roaring adventure movie in that second half. But for me, the first half is outstanding. It gets me hooked on this character, played by Chris Evans. The fact that this guy is so weak in body, but so strong in spirit, and it's that kind of makes him the perfect soldier. You know, it's about what's on the inside, not what's on the outside, and it touches me. You know, and there's one scene in particular when he jumps on this hand grenade, and it can be so cheesy, you know, and I think to some extent it is actually quite cheesy, but it works, and it works because I believe in this character, because of the work they've put into these opening acts to make me believe in this character. At number 6, we've got Iron Man, the first Iron Man. First film out of the gate for the MCU, and what a way to start. Absolutely brilliant. Still like one of the best movies in the MCU. Like I say, it's my number 6, so there are 5 that I do still rate more highly than this. But as a way to start, like I say, you couldn't really have a stronger start than this. Genius casting, if you will, in the shape of Robert Downey Jr. I mean, it's easy now to say that, yeah, that's obvious casting, that's great. But at the time that he was cast in this, director Jon Favreau really had to fight to get him. Such a strong role, tailor-made for him. You know, on paper this is Robert Downey Jr. He's essentially playing himself, but he does it brilliantly. And this is a comic book character that most kind of everyday people, non-comic book readers, wouldn't have a clue about. You know, so to sell this to audiences as the start of some big universe is actually quite a tough sell. By the time we get to the end of the film, we go for the obligatory kind of big robots smashing each other fight scene. But because we've had all the character development, because we've gone on this journey with Tony Stark, having that final payoff, this 10-15 minute battle sequence, pays off. Which means that my number 5 choice is probably the biggest surprise to anyone watching this video. It's Iron Man 3. Now I think this film has kind of been disowned by many fans of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, especially Iron Man fans, die-hard Iron Man fans. And you know what? I understand it. I do. I get it. I get why you would have those issues towards the film, why you would maybe go so far as to say you hate it. If, you know, as a die-hard Batman fan, if Christopher Nolan had come along, or anyone had come along and taken the character of the Joker, set him up to be this ultimate villain of Batman, and then turned him into a complete joke, I would be pissed. But, you know, that being said, I don't think you can put the Mandarin in the same league as the Joker. You know, I think he's, as far as comic book characters go, he probably is ripe for being brought down a peg or two. Joker's up here, Mandarin is, yeah, not even close. So to do what they did, to have the balls to make those kind of decisions, I actually fear that they're not going to have the balls to make those kind of decisions again. It doesn't just feel like another MCU movie. It feels, first and foremost, like a Shane Black movie. And I love Shane Black. You know, Nice Guys was my favourite film of last year. So I love Shane Black, really do. So to come into this and not just see a comic book movie, but to see a Shane Black movie, that just, yeah, ticked all the boxes for me. At number 4, we've got Avengers Age of Ultron. Yeah, this film for me was a bit of a disappointment the first time I watched it. I don't think it quite lived up to the Avengers, and as you can tell, Avengers hasn't been on this list yet, so it still doesn't quite live up to the Avengers. But a lot of the criticisms I had, and you can go back and check my review on this, the criticisms I had were, and I've had this same criticism with Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's basically down to me missing a piece of information. And you do that sometimes, at least I do. I might trail off in thought, zone out for a bit, and I miss a vital piece of information. So then something happens elsewhere in the film, and I feel it's not explained. And I hate that in movies. But yeah, turns out it was explained. And that's the same with this film. There's a piece of information that I felt wasn't given, turns out it was. And after seeing it on multiple viewings, this film has gone up in my estimation, to the point where, as I say, from these 12 movies, I would put it at number 4. I think it's a cracking adventure movie, and to take all of these characters, so many characters, and give them all their due, you know, give them all their fair shot and put some brilliant action sequences in it. and just get some depth to it as well. You know, it isn't just about the jokes, it isn't just about the action, of which there is plenty, but there are great character moments in here where you feel like this team grows, and in many ways parts as well. You know, there's a few arguments, a few little splits that you feel will kind of, well, they do for anyone who's seen any of Phase 3. You know, there are things, animosities, I think, that kind of will come out of this and bubble to the surface in later films, and I like that. I like that Joss Whedon does a really good juggling act with all of these characters and makes something quite special. And I know a lot of people didn't like Ultron. I thought he was fantastic, to be honest. I really liked the performance by James Spader, and I liked the way that Joss Whedon wrote this character. The human element within him that he's trying to get out but can't quite, because, let's face it, he's not human, and he struggles with that. He struggles with the understanding versus what he feels, as much as a machine can feel, you know. And it makes for some really interesting kind of psychosis moments, I guess, some very Freudian type moments with this character. Number 3 is Guardians of the Galaxy. It's written and directed by James Gunn, and I think many people could probably argue that James Gunn does actually get to put his stamp on this film. If you've seen any of his previous work, such as Slither and Super, I do think there's definitely him in this film. You know, if you look at the way he usually writes, yeah, he's got a lot of his kind of hallmarks, his kind of characters, his kind of dialogue. These 5 characters that you just love each one of them. Now, I think personally my favourite is probably Drax. I just find what Dave Bautista does with that character is hilarious. As with many of the Marvel movies, the thing that lets this down just ever so slightly is a weak villain. Now, I would actually give this film a 4.5 out of 5. I did actually review it fairly recently on Letterboxd Sundays, but yeah, I'd give it a 4.5 out of 5. And I think the reason it loses that half mark is simply because it doesn't have the strongest villain. It's like I say, it's a trait of Marvel movies that seems to be quite prominent, and it is here as well. Other than that, this is just non-stop entertainment from start to finish. And so we get to my number 2, which is The Avengers. Yeah, you know, this is it. This was the culmination of everything that was worked towards in Phase 1, you know, and I think many people probably didn't believe it could happen, myself included. I think once we saw Iron Man, that's when we started to allow ourselves the hope that this could genuinely happen. And with each new film that came out, that dream, that hope, kind of looked like it was definitely going to become a reality, and it did with Joss Whedon's Avengers. It's a hard task to take all these characters who within their own right are main characters. They've all had their own films in which they were the star. It's a juggling act that I wouldn't envy anyone, and Joss Whedon really pulls it off. When you look at all of those initial films in Phase 1, Loki was probably the villain that had the most character. You never know where this guy is going to go, and I think it made him a perfect choice as the main villain for this film. Which brings me finally to my number 1 choice, what I think is the best movie from Phase 1 and 2 of the MCU, and that is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. This is a film that hits every nail on the head. I have no criticisms for this. For me personally, it is a perfect comic book movie. It's not just my favourite Marvel movie from these 2 phases, it is one of my top 10 comic book movies of all time. It's absolutely brilliant. The action sequences in it are really frenetic, have real impact to them. Russo brothers do a brilliant job with that. I think I really get hooked into the character of Captain America in this, and I like, you know, everyone talks about the 70s political thriller vibe. it's there and I like it and it suits this character. Of course it does. When you're dealing with someone who's called Captain America, how can you not get political with a character like that? But it works, it really suits. I like the relationship between him and Black Widow in this, and the relationship between Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson, the chemistry between them is really brilliant. And we get an amazing villain. We get two really good villains, in fact. You know, the Winter Soldier himself is a really great physical villain, but I think that Robert Redford steps in as the kind of the brains behind the operation, and he's got a lot of charisma. He's quite magnetic, and I like his reasoning. I like the backstory as to who he is, who he works for, and what it is he's trying to achieve. So, yeah, just from top to bottom, brilliant film. Not just a brilliant comic book film, but a brilliant film, period. And so there you go. That is my complete ranking of the first two phases of the MCU. But do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you think I'm talking absolute nonsense? If so, either way, please comment below and let me know your thoughts. And until next time, crack it.